Hi, Nick, and welcome to the Raw Success Podcast.
Hello, Stacey. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so lovely to have you here. We were so lucky to have you speak at our Raw conference this year, and all of our conference attendees just raved about the session that you did. And I thought, why not take that session and bring it to a podcast audience so that people that weren't in the room get to hear all about you and your fabulousness. We're going to be talking about personal brand, about how to build a personal brand, to grow a personal brand, because that's something that I've seen you do so effectively over the years. Do you want to start off by telling us your origin story? How did you get into developing this brand that is now, this speaks for itself, Nick Hardcastle brand that follows you all around the world?
I think really for me, I guess the origin story is I'm a performer. I started out really just wanting to be employed, so tried to become all things to all people, and by creating and developing a broad skill set, I was an actor and I sang and danced and I hosted radio and television, and I think that in that time, at that time when I was starting out in the 90s, that was great. Being a variety artist was actually really cool. But something shifted, and what started to happen was that I think particularly with the landscape of media shifting and there being a lot more unscripted and personality and thought leader and expert-led stuff, it started to become really clear that not just the industry, but audiences really needed to connect with you as a person, not just as an artist or as a thought leader. And so developing my own personal brands sort of became very frustrating for me. And the deeper I got into it, um, the more I was able to see how I could help other people. And so for the last kind of, I guess, 20 plus years, on the side, I've been working with CEOs, experts, thought leaders, and other performers, emerging artists, trying to help them really figure out who they are, where they fit in the cultural landscape or the landscape of media and the arts, or in fact, with corporate people in the business landscape and what they stand for, who their audience are and how to really speak to them, how they want to be perceived by them, and basically trying to get in touch with their unique point of view and their most authentic voice so that they could engage in a more meaningful way with their customers, their audience, whomever it is.
I love that. And you're so right. In the same way that the entertainment industry has kind of morphed from this, you put yourself out there in a show reel, you wait for the phone to ring, you wait for an audition, you wait for a call back. It's kind of really changed in that you have to build your own opportunities, you have to build your own brand, you have to build your own projects. And
Mm-hmm.
business has taken the same trajectory. It used to be you'd start a business and open the door and just wait for people to walk through the door. Hopefully your business was in, a high street area where
Traffic
people were walking,
area,
traffic
yeah.
area, that's it, where people were walking past all the time. And so, that was the key to success. But business in the same way has really merged into no, you've got to absolutely get clear on your messaging and get out there, so that get in front of people, really tell them what you're about, who you are, in order for people to purchase from you. And I think
Yeah.
more so now than ever before, it's not necessarily about the product that you have or the service that you have. It's about people finding alignment between you
Yes.
and what it is that you do and why it is that you do it, more so than the product or service that it used to be itself in the 90s. And so that unique voice, that unique message about who you are and what you're about, finding that and articulating that is such an important part of what we do now. How do you find a way into that conversation when it comes to working with new people, so that they can start to think about, what is it that makes me unique? What is it that makes me different? And how can I really make sure that I'm clear on that messaging in order to get that to my prospective audience?
I think that you're right. A lot of people, and maybe it's cultural here in Australia. I've been living in the United States for almost 12 years now, and prior to that in the UK. I think a lot of us, when we sit down and somebody says, "Well, what do you think is unique about you?" we all get a little bit modest and a little bit sort of like, "Oh no, I'm just, or they find it really difficult to find their own brand story until we start digging into, well, why are you here? Like, what is it about what you do now that attracted you to it in the first place? And when you sit with people and you just start to ask them a little bit about themselves, it becomes pretty evident pretty quickly what their story is. And I think that sometimes, yes, some people go into a family business or whatever it is, and they think, oh, I just did this because it's like, no, no, that's still a story. That's still
Hmm.
a great story. I think sometimes we need a little bit of help looking back in and realizing that we do have unique things about us sometimes because we might not be the most skilled at something or have the biggest reach or whatever it is. Um, we tap back into something ordinary. And I think sitting down with people and just having these conversations where I just make it really simple, like, please answer these questions. And then we just discuss them. So I do say, who are you really? You know, what do you think is unique about you? Who do you think your audience is? So talk to me about your customers. And then I say, why don't you profile one of them for me, like really specifically, and getting down into the specifics. And before you know it, they've actually created this whole world that's really specific and really clear that connects directly to them. And they start to see, oh God, I am actually unique. Like what I put out there is unique. The way I perceive things is unique. And so once they do that, then they can start to kind of reveal a little something. And by doing that, by starting to reveal something and tapping into your brand story and messaging, people start to get a sense of who you are, and that's how they engage. That's how you develop rapport, how you develop trust, right? And engagement. And I think given that we all now have the capability to be broadcasters on some level, that's where I guess the crossover between my experience with the entertainment industry, etc., comes into business. We're all now doing that. No one's just sitting there with their signage on the street. Like we all have the ability to, whether it's simply a website or you're putting out content through various social platforms or broadcasting platforms, we all have the opportunity to reach more people, to share our personal and brand stories or our business stories, and so it's important that we harness that and play an active role in how we broadcast to people.
And it's what I'm thinking when you're talking, Nick, because you're exactly right. I'm thinking about the parts of you that are part of your story that always attracted me to you. You've been always really forthcoming in the fact that you are from a small country town and you grew up and had dreams and aspirations to go to the big city. And then you knocked on doors and you took opportunities and then you moved to Los Angeles. You've always made that part of the experience of knowing you, and you talk about it, quite beautifully as part of your content and as part of your presentations. And that is what has resonated with me in that we've been able to collaborate and do things because you've always been really specific and honest about what it is that makes you you and what that important part of your story. What do you say to business owners who are like, oh, but it's not about me, or no one cares if I'm where I'm from or what I've done? Or what do you say to those business owners that are perhaps a little bit shy to put themselves out there and really take the risk of being vulnerable and saying, this is me?
I can completely understand why some people don't want to be front facing in their businesses. Um, I it's that's absolutely not for everyone, but I think that what you want to where you want to come from here is that I'm so sorry, like I don't know how this happened, but I my all of my alerts are on and they're coming out of me, and I'm getting all these things in my ears. Oh my goodness.
All, all
Again,
good.
sorry, authenticity. I'm trying to be really focused here, and I'm like, how did this happen? I haven't. Anyway, it's true. A lot of people don't want to be front facing, and they want to be able to step back behind the brand. But if you're trying to, this comes down to how you relate to your buyers, your staff, like everybody around you, where you sit in your personal mission and why you're in business. It's all part of it. So I think that I would challenge these people to say that you stepping into your story, your brand story, and being at the forefront of your business and being able to speak about why it is you do what you do is only going to help you. And I appreciate that some people don't want to be on Instagram lives or TikToks or putting things out there like that. So that's where we come back and we go, well, how do you want to be perceived? That's a very, very big part of this question when it comes to personal branding.
Yeah.
And it might be, I want to be perceived as a quiet achiever. I want to be perceived as somebody who is there for others, who doesn't necessarily put, that's all part of it then. We build
Mm-hmm.
that into it, you know? You don't have to be the person that's got your face on the billboards and doing all the things. It's about being
I mean, you and
real.
I will
It
be.
really,
We'll be on the
we
billboards.
will
We're
be.
fine
We're
with it.
totally comfortable with that.
But you're exactly right. It's not for everybody. And I find as well that people, when they have that expectation of, okay, well, you've got to show up and you've got to show up as yourself. And then they start thinking, well, exactly what you said. I've got to be on TikTok. I've got to be on Instagram. I've got to be doing, reels to trending audio and dancing and pointing at things. It's not about that. It's actually about finding your clear message and then finding the
Yes.
channels in which you're really comfortable. Because if you're not, if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to do it. And then you're going to beat
You're
yourself
not
up
going to
about
do
it.
it, and
It's not going to
you're going
happen.
to come across exactly. You're going to come across as inauthentic anyway.
Yeah.
It's going to look forced. It's going to look uncomfortable. So that is why that question is really important. We think about it.
Yeah.
What is really important about how you want to be perceived, and so profile your audience, then think about how you want to be seen by that audience slash customer slash whatever. I use audience just because I am from the entertainment business, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
It's still exactly the same thing.
What are some brands that you love, that you resonate
Gosh.
with, that you believe tell a really good brand story?
Oh gosh. Wow, that's a really good question. And
Sorry
something
to
I
put you
haven't
on the
really thought
spot.
about it. Yeah.
Well, it's not something I've thought about either until we jump into this discussion, but I have been trying to get my car serviced. And
Right.
and there are
This is
some
interesting. Okay, here's a segue.
segue. There are some places in town that
Mhm.
are just not very good at their jobs. They're just not very, they don't speak to me as their customer. And maybe that's because I'm not their
Mhm.
customer. But 5 hours from where I live, there is a place that has a great brand story that I've, taken the car to before in the past and did it when I was on holidays. So it wasn't, I'm not driving 5 hours to get my car serviced. However, I had such a good experience with them and their brand was so strong and they were so good when it came to customer service and their follow-up is so good. Like I hear from them all the time in my inbox, hey, don't forget about this. Hey, you need to be reminded about this. Have you thought it, stuff that I don't have any idea about, oil changes and such. But because they're
Mhm.
constantly reminding me of their message, they're a family, business. They work together. Here's Steve from out the back. Here's George who changes the tires. They're constantly
Yeah.
telling me their brand story. This morning, Christy, my assistant, was booking my car in for a service and we couldn't, and it turns out here in town is going to be 6 weeks away. And I said, call those guys up the road, 5 hours up the road, and I will make the trip. I will make the trip 5 hours to get my car
Wow.
serviced because I so clearly resonate with your branding and what you do and how you do it. And you've treated me so well in the past. And I just feel like uh, that's a very particular story. But there are just some brands that we resonate with, right?
Absolutely.
That just get us and that we get them. And therefore we want to do silly things like drive 5 hours to get there or pay, a ridiculous amount of money for a particular product or service. Like Peloton is a great example for me when it comes to
Mhm.
brand. I love the Peloton brand. It's a million miles across the ocean. It's not founded in Port Macquarie, but I resonate with them and the energy that they bring and the story that they tell. And therefore I, purchased the bike, got it
Yeah.
shipped across the ocean. I get on it every morning and I'm really loyal to that brand. Do you have brands like that
That's
make you go,
great.
they're doing a great job?
I fall in and out of loves and brand loyalty all the time. I think for me, it's more about the way, the touch points, the way in which they tell their stories. Like, are they being so first of all, are they ethical? Are they being
Mm.
inclusive? Do they have any kind of like either social justice or like social enterprise type elements to what they do? Sometimes it could just be about them being it's like, hey, no bells and whistles, this is just us, and it's like they
Mm,
just are what they say on the tin. And that can be just as powerful to
on
me
the
too,
tin.
right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we're just what we say we are on the tin.
Yeah.
And I think that works really well as well. I mean, being in Los Angeles for such a long time, like you're so confronted by, I
I was
mean,
going to
it's just
say
a city of
overwhelming.
billboards. It's
Yeah.
a city of billboards and pop-ups and advertising and smoke and mirrors. So they've got to work pretty hard to filter through
Mm.
over there. And I mean, it's so do we. I think if you get those basic pillars right from the beginning, then that's how you find your audience and that's how you keep people. Like they've kept you.
Yeah. So I think for business owners that are listening, thinking about what it is that makes you unique, thinking about ways in which you can step into your own personal brand and growing your own personal brand, what it is that you believe in, what it is that you want, what it is that you want to share, because there's parts of us we don't want to share, and that's totally okay.
That's
We're
right.
not saying like open the kimono. It's completely up to you. But I think being
Open the
strategic,
kimono.
I think being strategic about it is super important because if you don't think about it, you're leaving money on the table. And if you are
You are.
strategic about it, it's something that can really help elevate you and your own business and yourself and your own personal brand.
I always think that structure gives us freedom, right? When you come up with a plan and a pathway, it just opens everything right up. I used to always feel like, oh, okay, no, that's going to confine us, right? That limits us in what we're open to or where we can go. But it's really quite the opposite. When you start getting very specific and you start having clarity around things, it gives you a driving force. It's the only way you can get from A to B is to know where B is in the first place, right?
Yeah.
The only way we can manifest what we want as human beings is like having a sense of clarity around what it is that we want, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. So the more specific you can be from the ground up and the more clarity you can have, it doesn't mean it can't change. It doesn't
Yep.
mean you're, married to this idea and that's it forever. But in order for you to create a pathway to begin with and have any kind of momentum, digging down into those specifics from the beginning is going to really set you up for success.
Beautiful. And so what's next for Nick Hardcastle and the Nick Hardcastle personal brand? What's
Oh
on the
wow! Well,
horizon?
I'm really fortunate in that over the years, sort of out of necessity, and I won't lie, coming out of COVID in my business and where I was in LA was tricky enough because production was all over the place, and I went out there and I started working with producers and I wrote COVID compliance plans for them, and I did all sorts of different things, which was great for me to stay in the business because there was less production, there was less work for me as an actor and a host. We weren't doing big events. All my theatre stuff went, by the wayside during that time. Um, but coming out of that, we went into strike mode. We were on strike for 7 months,
Hmm.
and it was really, really difficult. So I've just been in this constant state of pivoting while keeping my sort of consulting stuff over here on the side. And what's come out of it is I feel like I really do have a lot to share, a lot to contribute here in Australia as well as over there. And so I'm starting a speaking services company called Hello Nick Speaking.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so
and
great.
and so it incorporates me as a speaker, me as an MC and a host, but also how I can work with teens and young adults to say something, how I can
Mm,
work with emerging artists, whether that's developing their personal brands, becoming actors, going from actors to becoming generators, or media training, getting ready for the junkets if they're about to go and be out there in front of the media for the first time, or they're going to be presenting for the first time, and then working with, as I said, corporates, thought leaders, business owners, etc., and helping them get out from essentially being this behind the scenes player to standing up and taking charge of their own personal mission as well as their brand mission. So yeah, segments like that, doing workshops, etc. So that's that. And in the meantime, I'm producing a little show, which is going to be a lot of fun with some RuPaul's Drag Race queens. I'm
Fun.
very, very excited about that. They're great talent, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing that. And that's coming out of here in Sydney. But they're both global queens, and I'm sure it's going to attract a great global audience. And I'm starting on that like this week, so I'm really excited about that as well.
Fantastic. Well, we hope that you continue to have a relationship with the Raw Success community. And of course, if anyone
My pleasure.
is looking for any kind of help when it comes to personal branding, hello, Nick speaking. Stand by for hello, Nick speaking. That's so exciting, Nick. I'm so excited. Like just everything about that vibrates really high in terms of energy for me. That's wonderful. I can't wait to see it absolutely flourish. Thank you so much for taking the time, not only to join us on the Gold Coast for the 2024 Raw conference, but also for taking the time to join us here today. And I so value the contribution. I know that everybody who attended the conference does as well, that you've made then and now. And I look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks so much.
Oh, Stacey, absolutely. I had such a great time up there, and it's always just joyful to hang out, speak, discuss anything with you. So thank you for including me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Raw Success podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.